This will be something of a bonus episode in a sense, because the purpose of the podcast really is for creatives to come in and me to talk about their process. And obviously you've had your own podcast talking about yourself.
Yes.
But we're not going to talk about like you or me or have some kind of very general conversation and just see where it ends up. We have a bit of an agenda for what we want to talk about here. So to quickly put into the framework of what we're going to be doing, we've both switched our camera setups over to Fuji. Myself from Canon, and you went from Canon to Sony and now to Fuji.
I did indeed. And
we're just going to talk through kind of the reasons behind it, some of the stories about using this stuff, what we're going to miss, what we're not going to miss. And then I'm going to plant the seed now, but I've got an idea for a camera that I'm pretty sure if Fuji would listen to me, they'd make a lot of money.
I think if Canon had listened to you, they'd have made a lot of money as well.
Well, they made a lot of money even without listening to me, just by me recommending stuff.
It's true. You did sell a lot of their stuff.
So it's now been about a month and a half, I think, since the beginning of the turnaround. I came in as a Canon user. I've been a Canon user for 7 years. God,
that's a long time.
Yeah, and it's a lot of cameras as well. Actually, it's quite scary when you start going through the amount of cameras that I've gone through.
Yeah.
And so about 7 years since I started, basically, with Canon. Was with Canon because my mum had Canons when I was a kid, and that's just kind of what I knew. And I one thing I want to clear up right off the bat is that I don't have any horrendous brand allegiances, or I don't have some kind of weird bias towards one brand or the other. I just want something to do what I want it to do and then fuck off. You know what I mean?
I know what
I'm
you
not
mean,
going to buy a polo shirt with Fuji written on it. I'm not. Okay, before we even start, let's just.
Yeah, let's clear it up.
let me tell you something you don't know about, because you stay so far away from the internet side of photography, don't you?
I do, because it's kind of a horrible place to be.
You have to be very sad, I think. And part of me is sad enough to be in there a bit, but there are depths. It's like Mariana's Trench. There are bits I haven't been to and I don't know what
you
it's
down there. You just kind of dip your toe and then you get back out.
I do. And a piece of vernacular that I've been informed is used by Fuji users is you don't say photograph. Apparently you say Fuji Graph. Which,
oh, God.
Yeah. When the first time, because I put up a post on a photography forum talking about my Switch and showing an image, and they said that's a wonderful Fuji graph. And I thought, okay, that's one person. Like, he might just be like his parents might have bought him a computer or something. And it turns out that quite a few people use that term, which is, if you're out there and you're a Fuji user and you're using the term Fuji graph, or you're using any brand to kind of replace part or all of a word, just stop doing that.
I'll be honest with you, Fuji graph doesn't sound anything like it's related to photographs. It sounds like it's a mathematical graph, like you've got a pie chart, a bar chart.
Oh, you mean like it's like a Japanese stat?
That's what it sounds like to me. That's so... it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Now, having switched, there's a few really big teething issues for me. The first is...
Wait. I think before you talk about your teething issues, I think I need to explain why. Like, why did you switch?
Okay.
What made you switch? Because I'll be honest with you, even living with you, you went from all Canon with my one Sony camera and my one Sony lens, and then Fuji. Yeah. So it kind of came out of nowhere.
It took about 3 weeks for me to go from, might give that a go, to I've sold all my stuff.
Yeah. And now I'm looking at a table full of Fuji stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So the start of it, obviously, we went to San Francisco a few years ago, and if I use the word we, I mean I. Okay, we did go to San Francisco, but I made the decision that I was going to buy an XT2.
Yeah.
And look at pairing it with the Canon stuff when we were both Canon shooters.
Yeah.
This was a lot less complicated at that point. And the plan was...
It wasn't to me, by the way.
Well, you weren't going to be using it, so you didn't care. So I bought the XT2, and like most things in life, I test the waters by buying everything. And we went out to San Francisco. It was the worst holiday we've had.
Yeah.
I can't imagine we're going to have a worse one unless we go to South Africa and get murdered, or we decide to go to Somalia and lick the sand on the beach, or go to Australia and go backpacking in a lorry.
I think it has to be pretty extreme for it to be worse.
Yeah. And just to contextualize this, let's just quickly run down the issues. 2 different cab drivers tried to rip us off of a significant amount of money, one of which threatened us in Arabic, which you understood. And he didn't realize you were going to understand it and then panicked. And
boom.
We had a hotel which was incredibly, incredibly bad. A very, very major one. Is it Western?
Western something.
Yeah, is it Union Square?
Yeah, it's in Union Square.
Absolutely atrocious, horrible, disgusting hotel.
And supposed to be like
a
top end.
Fortune that cost me. It was terrible. We had the whale watching where there was no whales until we got back.
And we almost died.
And we almost died from just hitting wave after wave at like 100 miles an hour for 3 hours there and then 3 hours back. It was fucking horrible. When we tried to walk around the actual city, there was a couple of occasions where you were approached. As soon as I wasn't next to you, you were approached by generally just like, I don't know, 20, 30-year-old men.
Yeah.
But like 5 or 6 at a time making really inappropriate, disgusting comments. We tried to go and get a Subway, and there was the woman shooting up in the doorway of Subway. And heroin is always a head turner on a holiday. If you see heroin being used, that tends to taint the view of the holiday.
It does indeed, especially from my little innocent mind.
Yeah. I think that was your first experience with any hard drugs at all.
Yeah.
And then I got food poisoning from a really shite pizza place and spent 3 days incredibly ill, one of which was in like 40 degrees in Yosemite National Park, trying to hike while trying not to shit my kidneys out.
Yeah.
And weirdly, I had a memory about that today. Do you remember was it joggers or cyclists that scared the deer? I think it was joggers.
It was joggers.
And the deer ran towards me, but not like towards me, but like near me.
In the general direction.
And I took a couple of pictures, and that warden woman come out of nowhere and was like, you need to back off.
Yeah. I thought she was going to get a gun out, to be honest with you.
Yeah, she was really pissed off. I was like, fuck me, I'm like trying not to shit myself, and I have a chance of getting a picture of a deer. Go away. Yeah. I've done nothing wrong. I couldn't chase this deer if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Anyway, so San Francisco was terrible, and we came back, I went through the photos on the XT2. Now, to use the XT2 is amazing. You really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun to use as a camera. But I was just massively disappointed with the photos. And I think over the last couple of years, what I think has happened is I've kind of realized something that I do far too often is I associate a bad experience with everything around that bad experience.
Yeah.
So if I have a problem with, I don't know, if I'm late, me being late is like the worst one. If I'm late to something, I'm ruined for the day.
Yeah.
And I think that I'd associated the negativity of that holiday with the Fuji, and therefore the pictures were never going to be good regardless of what I'd have taken them on.
Yeah.
So fast forward a couple of years, and I've had my head turned a couple of times. We picked up, and again I mean we as in I, picked up the X100F, which is the little fixed lens Fuji earlier this year, and that was purchased
I forgot we had that.
Yeah, well, I buy a lot of cameras.
You do.
And that was going to be, quote unquote, our dog camera. And we took it out basically just on dog walks, didn't we? And we got lots of pictures of...
they're actually framed in
we got some framed pictures from that. It's a really nice camera to use. You really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Really small. I could just stick it in my coat pocket and stuff. A really nice camera. I had a couple of issues with it, but nothing particularly major. But absolutely loved it. And the image quality for the size of it and the convenience of it is brilliant. And then sort of as this year's gone on, more and more I've had my head turned by photos I've seen and videos on YouTube made by people that use Fuji.
And is that photos and videos that you've sought yourself, or have they just popped up?
No, they just crossed my path, and I tend to be someone who's very interested in the gear behind the photo, because for more than thinking that oh, if you buy that piece of gear, that's it. You'll be able to take that photo. It's more a case of, okay, you can get into the mindset of creating work like that if that's the piece of gear you're holding. Like I think gear has more to do than just technical. It's a lot of it is about how it's used, and I think like since we've switched to Fuji, the smaller size of stuff has changed how we shoot.
Yes, definitely. I agree there.
I mean, like straight off the bat, I can tell you candids at a wedding, we are very different people now, the way we're shooting candids at a wedding.
Oh my God, I've never been so close to people in my life.
You can tuck right in, you chatting to them, you can be making a joke or you can be sort of having a conversation and photographing them, and they just don't seem to care because it's a smaller camera, it's a lot less intrusive, it's a lot less intimidating.
Yeah.
But anyway, so as this year had gone on, I'd seen more and more stuff that I'd like the look of, and I do keep harping back to really enjoying the XT2's use. The actual use of it was brilliant. It's not so much thinking about the images from it, but just thinking about the use. And a couple of things that maybe people don't know, I have a crippling issue with back pain. Like for the last month, I've spent most of my time sleeping on the floor as opposed to sleeping in bed, purely because it just straightens my back out and it helps me be able to do some weddings. There's been weddings where if I have had as bad a back as I could have, I wouldn't be surprised if I'd have struggled to, I mean, I'd have just painkillered it and got through the day, but the next day I'd have been completely ruined.
Well, to be honest, it's just enabled you to walk.
Yeah. There's been some days where I've been completely like an old man. And whilst I'm not a particularly big fan of the general argument about mirrorless cameras being great for weight saving, I think with Fuji and Olympus in particular, those are actually true. Yeah. Because they do sacrifice stuff to make the cameras smaller, to make the lenses smaller. Whereas like if you look at Canon's mirrorless range and Sony's lenses, they're fucking enormous.
Yeah, they are.
It's completely unbalanced. And the argument about, well, you know, you're saving so much weight and you're saving so much bag space, you're just not. And then you add in the price and everything as well, it gets a bit ridiculous. So
I think people underestimate though how much the size and weight of lenses in the actual body of the camera itself, they underestimate the difference and how when you reduce that weight, the difference it makes to you as a person and how you
without wanting to, I'll probably get fucking hate mail for this, but do you think as a woman, it's nicer to have a smaller camera body, smaller lenses and stuff?
Yeah, and
because you're a slight woman. You're not a power lifter.
No, I'm not by any stretch.
And you've used Canon DSLRs with grips and huge lenses in the past.
Yeah.
And I know how much you struggled.
Well, yeah, because one of the things, we had a conversation about it a couple of years back, and you said to me, why don't you shoot more portrait orientations when you're at a wedding?
Yeah.
And I said to you, because I can't keep the camera steady and it just wobbles like I'm, playing Call of Duty and I can't shoot a gun properly. I'm just circling round. And the reason for that is because I'm a woman, because, I have lady parts and I cannot, when I have my hands...
Right. So
logistically, it's very difficult to hold a relatively big camera with the 100mm, the 135mm when I was doing candids or whatever, and hold it and keep it steady at the same time. It doesn't matter whether it's got IS in it or not. It was actually quite hard. So holding something landscape-wise made more sense. But even the switch from the Canon to the Sony made such a difference because it was a smaller body. I wasn't having to use so much of my weight to hold the camera up. And now with Fuji, it's even lighter, and mainly because the lenses are so much smaller as well. I don't need to hold them the same way.
The main problem with the setup now for mirrorless, the what would now be considered to sort of be the three leaders because of full frame, would be Sony head and shoulders above everybody.
Yeah.
And then I would say Panasonic Lumix, because they've just released their first full frame mirrorless.
Oh, okay.
But then if you look at like the next two in line is Canon and Nikon, and they are trailing. They're in the race in the same way that the guy at the back in Formula One is in the race. At the moment, they're just not.
They're nowhere
not
near
on
really
pace at all. They're just
present.
They're almost being lapped by Sony at this point. But one of the big problems is because you have to make up for the comparative flange distance. I know that you're not a big technical speaker, but because you take the mirror out, you reduce the size of the body, there is a huge gap in terms of magnification that needs to be sorted.
Yeah.
And so for example, with your Sony, you had the Sigma MC11, the adapter.
Yeah.
And when you put a Canon, that replaced the flange distance. Okay, that's primarily what that did. So it gapped enough space to make the lens work the same as it would on a mirrored body. It makes the whole thing unbalanced.
It made the 85mm like a 70 to 200.
Oh, it's just ridiculous. But not even like a 70 to 200, because a 70 to 200 would be more balanced, because the way that the actual weight is set out in the lens is more spread out. Whereas because you have that adapter with no glass in it,
yeah,
you've got weight at one end and then a gap with no weight as your pivot, and then a tiny bit of weight at the back. So it's actually even worse. I think it makes balancing the camera. People can argue all day long. I think one of the problems is people take photography and they test stuff in a sterilized environment.
Yeah.
And good for them. If that gets them views and Squarespace will sponsor them and all that other bollocks, then good for them. But the problem is that when it's in a sterilized environment, you can bring up problems that only exist in a sterilized environment. But when you're in a ceremony where you can't move any further back because there's a 300-year-old radiator that is set to on even in summer and it's literally scalding your calves, you can't go any further back because there's a wall, or you have to go over here and you have to be stood at a funny angle with a bad back, and there is no option to sort of I'll just leave it. I'll try it when it's easier. No, you have to get these photos. That's when you learn where the problems are with the camera. And I used the Sony for one ceremony.
I don't even remember.
Before you can even remember. We had only just got it. I used it for one ceremony and I hated it. And that was pretty much the reason that, without wanting to be mean here, but I was like, that's Jamila's camera.
Yeah, give that one to her. Now I vaguely remember, because you thought...
You liked it and I was on the fence. And then after that ceremony, I was like, this is dog shit. Like, not the camera itself, but trying to use that... The way it's balanced just didn't work for me at all. And also, without wanting, you're gonna think I'm being funny here, but I'm not. Since I've put on weight, the balance issue, like you're talking about, like logistically with like boobs.
Yeah. Like,
since I've put on weight, not that I have boobs, but like logistically, some cameras are really fucking hard to hold steady.
Yeah, they are.
When you're not just stood in a studio, or you're not just stood in a really sterilized environment, it actually can be a little bit frustrating. And I look back at some photos that I've taken over the last few years, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, was I really on that much of a Dutch angle? Did I think that looked cool? And it's like, no, I wasn't trying to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I just literally could not hold that camera how I wanted to hold it. So as the years gone on, obviously, like I say, I got my head turned a little bit. And there's a couple of YouTube videos about the XT3, which didn't feel like they were paid for, which the majority of YouTube videos about cameras are paid for. So it's quite hard to make your mind up. And you have to almost learn, I used to say to you, reverse the compliment. When someone gives you a compliment, reverse it. Make what they've said bad, and you can find out what they probably really meant.
Yeah.
If you're being cynical.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do with YouTube videos that are about cameras. So when you get someone who is clearly an endorsee of a brand, and they'll say, oh, the amazing thing with the Olympus is it's like the perfect outdoor camera. That means it's shit in low light and you can't use it indoors.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it means.
Yeah.
They're not saying the negative, they're implying the negative if you're cynical enough to look for it.
Yeah.
So after a lot of cynical videos and trying to understand where the actual balance was, the XT3 looked to be such a huge step up in the places that I wanted it to be a huge step up from the XT2 that I thought, I feel like I can now give this a go, and it might be a fantastic second body comparatively in price with my 5D Mark IV. And because of the size of the lenses and the cameras, it wouldn't be that much of an addition to my camera bag in the same way that adding another gripped 5D Mark IV or a 1DX would be, where it'd be so heavy that...
I think it would have required a third bag.
Oh, it would have been a third bag.
Quite easy, wouldn't it?
That was always the plan anyway. But it would have been a third bag that I would have to carry around.
Yeah.
So we got the XT3, and the first thing that jumped out to me, I think from the first photo I took with it, it's a lot sharper than the XT2. Whether that be just my experience with the old XT2 would be a good argument. Unfortunately, I also picked up an XT2 and I still found it comparatively sharper this time round.
Yeah.
The XT3 is just a sharper camera. It's much punchier. And because there's a very old truth with photography, which is like, you know, if you have a full frame, it's better in low light. And that's not changed. My 5D Mark IV murders the Fujis in low light. It's daft.
Yeah.
But the gap is smaller than it's ever been. And it's now small enough that I don't consider it a big enough problem to care.
Oh, that's good.
I would get a better image in low light out of the Canon. I just don't think it's better enough, or I don't think that I don't mean a layman as in a stupid person, but someone who's not qualified to look would even notice. So I'm then making decisions based on impressing other photographers or impressing myself in Lightroom. That seems daft to me. So once I'd picked up the XT3 and I'd shot a couple of portrait sessions on it and I'd used it as like a secondary body. And what we did was we basically only brought it out when all the safe stuff was done.
Yeah. We'll just add it in here. Let's just give this a trial run here and see how it works.
Exactly. So you had it with you when you do like the what we call the lay flats with all of the bridal accessories and the shoes and whatnot. So you would do all of that stuff with a Sony, and then I'd give you the XT3 and you'd do a few extra.
Yeah.
And we did that for about 5 or 6 weddings.
Actually, a really good way to...
It's a great way to incorporate a camera.
Yeah, to test it is a really, really good way, because rather than buying a new camera and going, oh, I'll test it in, like you were saying earlier, a sterile environment where everything is controlled, test it in somewhere which, you know, you would normally be using it, because that's the best way to just throw yourself in at the deep end.
Well, with you as well, what you were doing to me was you were giving me feedback on, I like this, and this is how it compares to the Sony. And it wasn't like generally, it was like in this exact example, because I have used both in this exact environment, in this exact light for the same photos.
Yeah.
Here's how they compare. So that was really helpful for me to hear how you were finding it. You obviously, you sort of turned the corner with it a little bit. I don't think you were particularly impressed when I decided to do the change to Fuji at all, even when I picked it up as like a secondary body.
Because I went, oh, I don't know any of these lenses and it's all different, and I'm going to have to learn everything again.
Right, and most of the Fuji stuff just looks the same.
Yes,
when you're coming from Canon, where you know the differences because you've seen them for the last
I know them in my sleep.
A decade. Now it's like, okay, so I've got to learn all of this new stuff, and also because it's crop, all of the focal lengths mean something different in my head.
Yeah,
like just practically speaking, that's the main thing I think. One thing that I find it's really refreshing to have you around for is that, and you don't know you do this, but you're a no bullshit meter for photography, because while people are coming up with loads of technical nonsense, you have a very like, can it work? Will it piss me off? How difficult is it to use? Fuck off. That like
That's
you
true.
have you like I could sit there and argue with you why something's a better system, but you're like, if it doesn't work for me, it's not.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's what's been really helpful. So
because photography at the end of the day should be easy. Okay, you can get really technical and you can get scientific with your histograms and your Fuji graphs or whatever it is, you know. But at the end of the day, that only matters to you and the other photography geeks sat next to you.
Photography should just be about taking pictures.
Yeah.
And all of the talking should be secondary. Unfortunately, the talking makes up about 90% of it, says the idiot that holds a photography podcast. So we get the XT3 and I picked up a few lenses, sort of slowly incorporated them.
Yeah.
And especially now, we are way ahead of where we were the last time we had Fuji stuff in terms of the amount of work that I've done. Definitely the way that you work. Like, to me, in the last 18 months, you're, and I edit your work, so I feel like I'm in a good position to say,
Yep.
Your work has jumped like through so many walls and got so much better, which means that when you pick up a camera, you know what you want it to do at least. You might not know why you want it to do it in terms of like having an argument over micro contrast, but you know you want it to do a
Don't even know what that is.
Right. But you know what you want it to do.
Yeah.
And again, you won't give me any bullshit. You won't like give me some comparative like nonsense to explain away a problem. You'll just say, this didn't work. I don't like this thing.
Or I have an image in my head and I say to you, this is the image I want. Just tell me what the hell I need to make that work.
Yeah. And that makes things a lot easier for me. So we had the 23mm f2, the 35mm f2, the 18mm f2, and the 50mm f2 was the first little batch of lenses we had.
Yeah.
You never used the 50mm f2. It did not stick around long enough because I picked up the 56mm 1.2 later on.
Yep.
But the 50mm f2, I have to say, would be one of your favorite lenses. It's something I'm definitely thinking about putting in your bag now that you're with Fuji.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a fantastically small, sharp lens and it's a really nice focal length. It's about 78mm or something stupid, but
quite good for my ceremonies then.
Yeah, I think so. And the one thing with the Fujis is obviously they give you a bit of a fork in the road with the way that their lenses are set out, generally speaking, which is like, so if you take the 35mm, for example, you've got the more modern f2, which is very fast focusing, but obviously hasn't got as wide an aperture as the 1.4.
Yeah.
The 1.4 is a bit louder in focusing. It's a little bit old school and it's a bit mechanical, I guess, is what I would say. It's not very internal.
Yeah.
But you get that extra stop of light, and I would say it's a tiny bit sharper for the lenses that I had. The 35-1.4 was sharper than the 35 f2.
Yeah.
So they give you that sort of fork in the road. And you say, well, do I need the extra stop of light or do I need it to be quieter and smaller?
Yeah.
So it's quite nice that you get that because like with Canon, obviously we went over to the Sigma Arts because we had issues with the 35mm, the old one. I wasn't going to pay the money for the new one because the new one was...
They were just extortionate.
It's like, I think it's about 1,700 quid.
For nothing that really... You couldn't justify spending that much money on it.
Not from a business point of view. I think if you have like a really well-paying job and you like photography and it kind of gets you out of the house and away from the wife or away from the husband and it gives you something to brag about to your friends, then I'm sure you can find a way to justify it. But from a business point of view, to give me a lens that I could buy three of, I could buy 3 Sigma Arts for the price of that one lens.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. It's a bit daft, really.
So we then pick up, to go through what we now have, I guess I'm going to do a what's in my bag for the YouTube video, as much as I hate those fucking videos. But as we go through it now, so we have an XT3 each.
Yes.
You've decided... And I think it was a good move that the XT3 was the one you were going to go with. It's sharp, it's fast, it's got all the settings you need. It's got a decent face detect, which we'll come back to because the Sony murders it. We have an XT3 each. I have an XH1, which initially I thought would be your camera.
Yeah.
When I ordered it. And my God, the price on these is so good.
It really was, wasn't it?
But there's a couple of issues that kind of took it away from being yours and put it back in my bag. The first is that it's a fair bit bigger, especially with the grip on.
Well, it's like I was saying to you earlier, it actually looks quite clunky.
Yes.
Quite a bit extra to it. Even just looking at it from a bird's eye view,
yeah, it
looks like it's a...
So it's squarer.
Yeah, like a really old film camera. It's got extra bits in it.
It looks like an 80s film camera.
Yeah.
The Fujis look like an older film. The XT3s look like an older film camera. But in the 80s, they made stuff bigger for the sake of making it bigger. And that's kind of what the XH1 looks like.
Yeah.
But I really like the size of the thing. And the other thing which you didn't like the moment you touched it was the really soft shutter that you couldn't really tell if it was half pressed or fully pressed. And because we don't back button focus, you use the shutter button for the focus. That's a bit of a difficult one. You don't want to have like the premature ejaculation of taking photos as an issue at weddings, right?
No, I don't.
And then the last camera, which is the last one I picked up, was the X Pro 2.
Which is a neat camera.
It's a fun little camera. It's going to be one that I'm going to take a trip to London this week. That's going to come with me. It's going to be it's great for candidates at weddings because people just don't care.
That is very much like the old film cameras or the old disposable cameras, mostly because the viewfinder is at the edge and not in the middle.
Yeah.
And every time I stick that camera to my face, I'm smacking my nose on that and not seeing anything because I'm like, oh, I need to shift the camera to my right. Yeah, so I can actually see.
In your defense, you've used it about 3 times at weddings, but still, I know what you mean. Like,
it's weird.
To switch to a rangefinder out of nowhere is a bit unusual.
Yeah.
It's a cool camera, though. It's a lot of fun to use, and it's just very subtle.
Yeah.
No attention really paid. The question that I've already been asked is about the X Pro 3. So
is that the one
it's the upgrade of this that's just been announced. It's coming out at the end of this month.
We were looking at reviews the other day. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it has a couple of things that are a bit unusual. It has a little mini display on the back where it shows like a film box cut, basically, like you used to do in the old days.
Yeah.
Or you can have it show your settings like on top of the XH1. And then it has a fold-out screen, which is where you find the actual back screen. You can't have the back screen on the back.
Yeah.
And the meaning behind it is supposed to be kind of putting you back into looking through the viewfinder, and you're more focused on taking photos rather than just looking at the back of the screen, would be my guess. I've heard a few people say that is the meaning, but until I hear Fuji say that is the meaning, I'll assume that's pretty much a good assumption to make.
Yeah.
There's a major mistake Fuji made with this camera, this X Pro 3, and I seem to be the only person that can acknowledge this. Don't put video in it. It's not built in any way ergonomically for video. You're talking about taking things back to pure photography. Take the fucking video functions out. Take out all of the nonsense that's associated with it. Clear the buffer. Clear the computer inside the camera of all of the burden of carrying video nonsense. And when people complain about it, say it's a fucking photography camera. Go away. There's already enough people that are pissed off.
Yeah.
But I think the reason they haven't is because they were going to get so much stick for the back screen being hidden that they were like, well, if we take video out as well, this camera's going to get murdered. And I think they actually misinterpreted the way the reaction would go. The more polarizing something is, the more it kind of, you either love it or hate it, the more of a cult following it will have.
Yeah.
The more you try and make stuff vanilla, like all cameras are these days, where they can do every camera can do all of the same things, it gets a little bit, you can't really love a camera because...
It's kind of equivalent to going to your GP. Your GP is general for everything, not specialised in anything in particular. So you get the basic best in all scenarios. So when you get a camera that's got really amazing video quality and really amazing photo quality, you're not actually getting the absolute best of either one because they've had to fit all of that into one camera.
Yeah.
So if you really want a camera for video, buy a camera that's for video, like specializes in it. And if you really want a camera for photography, buy a camera that specializes in photography. I don't know, and we've met many photographers, and now having done weddings, many videographers. I don't know many people that will buy a camera that's a videographer and say, oh, well, I also use it for lots of photos as well. No, they only use it for video. Mm-hmm. But you've got a camera that does pictures. Why did you not buy a specialized camera and vice versa?
But we've got cameras and we only take pictures. But we're walking around all day. Like at the moment, we're walking around with 4K in every one of these cameras, I think. For definitely 3 of them.
I definitely don't know.
But we're walking around with all these video functions that I'm just not going to use.
Yeah, it just seems like
such
a waste. It's very
frustrating because I'd rather... what I would rather, and I talked about Canon doing this years ago, I was having a conversation. So, like you have signature guitars. And I was talking about like, what would your signature camera be? And I said, like, you take a 5D Mark IV, you attach the grip so it can't come off, because why would you have that camera without a grip?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have it like the 1DX, but I don't want the 1DX. I want the 5D Mark IV, but with the grip like a full body.
Yeah.
The way the 1DX is. You get rid of the video functions and you open up the buffer so that you can shoot and the camera can process all day long.
Yeah.
And then I'm fine.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all. And a few extra custom function buttons because I really do like to have stuff. I mean, like even right now, like, when you watch the old bobsleigh teams at the Olympics where they kind of like envision the route.
Yeah.
I right now can tell you what every button on my Canon, which I haven't had for a month, does.
Yeah, I can do the same with my Sony.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that would be it. There wouldn't be much more I'd actually give much of a shit about. I would be fine sticking with DSLR if they would have made a few changes. In fact, while we're here, let me just talk about this really quickly. And I want to talk to you about Sony, but I'm just going to talk about Canon for a second. So the problem is there is an inevitability to mirrorless because of the voices that are most prominent in photography are YouTube voices. And unfortunately, it's a snake eating its own tail because the companies are paying the voices, and then the voices are telling the companies, and the companies are, so they're just listening to their own ideas.
It's a vicious circle, isn't it?
So you get people like Frono's Photo, who is, I don't really know how else to put it, but a shill. He's a corporate whore. It's like whatever they'll pay him to say, he'll say.
Yeah.
And you have someone like him, and he, like recently, he's, I mean, as much as you can, bearing in mind some of the things you've heard me say over the years, this sentence apparently has like stirred controversy that he said the DSLR is dead. The DSLR is not dead. I have seen someone with my own eyes doing wet plate photography. It is not dead. Until I see, there's a couple of people I give a fuck about when it comes to the photography industry, and they tell me what's actually going on. The first one is when I look at a football match or an ice hockey match or any kind of sport, and I look around the outside of where the sport is taking place, the day I see those photographers all using Sonys or all using mirrorless, we'll talk. But I still see them all using DSLRs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
That you might be able to go, oh, look, but I found this one picture this one time at this one game where there's this one guy who was probably reviewing a camera.
Yeah. It needs to be across the board.
Yeah, and one of the main problems with that is the fact that there aren't the lenses and the logistical means for you to switch over completely. You know, the reason that there are sports shooters shooting on Canon DSLRs or on Nikon DSLRs is because they can get a 600mm lens and it doesn't cost an absolute fortune, and it balances on the body a damn sight better than one that's got a huge flange sort of compensation, and you've got this tiny little body attached to it. There will come a point this will all get corrected. And I think that the main thing that I've come to sort of accept over the last year is, as wrong as it is, the camera world is just going to keep pushing towards one type. The one truth is they won't make both DSLRs and mirrorless at equal rates.
Yeah.
One will have to slow down, and they're not going to slow down the new product. They're going to slow down the old product until it completely bombs, which I don't think it will, because I think you're now getting a generation of people learning photography on mirrorless. And if you thought that learning on a digital SLR was easy compared to film, you try learning photography on a mirrorless. It is like having someone else wipe your ass for you. These people now that are picking up a camera for the first time and they're learning on mirrorless, they don't have to do anything. The camera does all of the work for them. It's the easiest time in the entire history of mankind to learn photography. It's never been easier. I can't see many ways it can get much easier. And I talked about this recently about the plateauing of cameras.
Yeah.
They're not getting better. They're getting more dumb-proof. Cameras aren't... You remember 5-6 years ago, but do you remember 5-6 years ago, the 5DS, right? And it was like a 50 megapixel 5D.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. That's going to kill medium format.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
You know, it's a joke of a camera because you can't get real, like the live view through the eyepiece. You know, it hasn't got an EVF. All that's happening is cameras aren't getting better. They're just dumb-proofing so much of it. Yeah. It's never been easier. That's the God's honest truth. And if that's sort of hurtful and you're someone who's learning photography and you feel like that's sort of a slight towards your achievements in what you've learned, get over it. Because it's easier now to practice medicine than it was 100 years ago. It's easier to learn to drive now than it was 100 or 50 years ago or 20 years ago. Hell, we've been driving for 12 years, 13 years.
Yeah. And
it's a lot easier in terms of the car to learn to drive now than it was then.
Yeah.
You know, like I still remember I'm still poor and remember the days where you had to know the tricks to keep a car going, despite all of the mechanical faults that develop, because it's a piece of shit that wasn't supposed to last that long.
Well, we're still one of the youngest generations to remember non-power steering.
Oh,
you
God,
say
yeah.
if you say
in winter,
if you say to somebody now, like some of the younger girls I've got at work who are driving, and we're like, you have no idea how hard it is to drive without power steering. They don't understand the concept of that.
Back in the day when you got down like a cul-de-sac and you had to do a 3-point turn, you didn't have power steering. You're like, sod it, I'll just buy a house here.
You just leave your car in the middle of the road. Done.
Yeah, I'm walking home. I'm done.
Got to wind the windows down. You're joking.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So it's not a bad thing.
So this is funny because I was talking to a policeman at a wedding a couple of weeks ago. And he was saying to me that the hand signal to wind your windows down, most people don't know what you mean when you do it. So you have to point. Because like obviously when we got pulled over, do you remember they would do like the hand signal, like the winding hand signal? Go, okay, I got to wind the window down. But now they kind of like and point downwards, and that's the only way.
I'm sorry, but if they were pointing at me, like if they did that to me, I'd be like, what are you looking at? What's on the floor?
What's outside the car?
Yeah.
But
it's not a bad thing that cameras have advanced to this point where now it's easier to learn something. Just you have to take advantage of where we are in the development of technology. It's a good thing. Don't be annoyed by it.
I think to an extent I agree that it's a good thing in theory. I think that there are unintended consequences to everything. Like sports science has got a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
If you took an average football team from the Premier League now and you had them play the Premier League or the best team in England from say the 50s, it would be a massacre.
Yeah.
Not because the ability is so much better, but because the guys on the pitch now they've got nutritional advice, they've got specific workouts, they know more about the science of the body, surgery is better.
Regular physio and
so on. So they are now, compared to 1950s athletes, they're machines. That's great. Like, that's obviously a fantastic thing. If you snapped a hamstring 20 years ago, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Now, they can probably just get a robot to just ping it back on. You're running around 10 minutes later. That's great. The unintended consequence of cameras being more easy to use is that more people are using them. And because you can produce certain things very quickly, very easily, people just instantly think, I am amazing because I managed to make this camera take a photo.
But I think that cameras and phones have already taken that away. So I think that with cameras being so simplified now and easier to use, I think that it hasn't really made much difference because those people that are picking up the cameras that are now easier to use have been doing it on their iPhone or their Samsung for ages now. So
probably,
even though it's slightly different, but you can still
But you're not a photographer doing it on a phone.
No, you're not.
You can now call yourself a photographer doing it on a Sony A7 III.
Yeah.
You can now call yourself not to become a bitter old man I have become over the last couple of years, but you only have to look at the educational side of photography. And you look at some of the people that are the ones doling out advice. And some of the photographers that are very prominent, I can't say this guy's name, but you've got people like Brandon whatever. Basically, his thing is, did you know, I'm going to blow your mind here, Jamila, but if you shoot at a really wide aperture, okay, and you have fairy lights in the photo and they're in the distance, they make balls in the photo of light, okay? They make little balls of light all around the photo. Did you know that?
What?
Oh, right, exactly. It's mind-blowing. Now, imagine that. Imagine how simple that is. That, to me, it's like saying, did you know that if you put bread, right, and you put it into a machine that applies more heat, you get toast, which is fine. But then it's like, everyone already knows this. And it's like, imagine now if someone came out claiming they invented a toaster.
You have one in your house. Laugh at them, yeah.
But they're not laughed at. It's like them, and technically, such a terrible photographer. Like, such a terrible photographer. It's all just wank bank material for millennials who are just so excited by colours. Like, we are the ultimate dumb generation of people that like this stuff. So you've got this like one of the things I've seen is like he puts up pictures where he shows like a before and after, and he'll take a photo that's like 3 stops underexposed and he'll just lighten it and he's like, oh yeah, that's my style. It's like, no, you just didn't know what the fuck you were doing at the time. The camera didn't know what to do because there were so many light sources, and you probably had this in like aperture priority. And if you took away the girl that most people who like the photo want to have sex with, and you take away what I can only describe as moron candy, which is the sort of the way that the lights, the lighting effect in the photo, the colors. If you take all of that stuff out, this guy doesn't have a leg to stand on, but he's one of the most prominent people in most people's minds with photography these days.
But again, I think it's like I said to you the other day, that especially because it's all on YouTube, that it's not about the camera, it's not about the equipment that you're using, it's the personality. It's all about the individual themselves.
Like
they are
charisma,
the forefront.
Right.
Because when we sit and watch camera reviews, I've picked up this new camera, like the guy we watched the other day with the new Fuji. And he didn't show any images.
Yeah.
He was videoing himself talking in several different kinds of weather in New York, sat on a different set of stairs. And then we were watching these poor girls ballet dancing in next to nothing in
rain.
Freezing
in the
rain.
rain.
It was ridiculous. So he
and
didn't show us any picture.
Image.
It was like, what are you doing? Because he was more set on the idea that he was more important than what it was that he was doing.
Almost like his celebrity.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's all it comes down to now. So these people, like you said, the waffle guy, excuse me, didn't mean to be rude, but that guy.
Yeah.
But like you said, his
I
work.
doubt after what I've just said, anyone's going to think that you're being rude.
Just checking, just in case. But you said that his work is just, it's not good. He's not technically very good.
Okay, so a few years ago, for anyone that doesn't know, we're married. We've been together for 15 years, married for 7. And
7 next week.
Like over half our lives together.
Yes.
And we've known each other since we were 7 years old.
Yeah.
Do you remember a few years ago, I think we were at it might have even been your sister's wedding, but we were somewhere where they had the TV on there. We don't watch TV. We'll watch an app. We'll watch Netflix or YouTube or Prime. We don't watch like BBC
normal
One.
General TV.
We don't watch that stuff. But we were somewhere where they had the TV on in the morning. It was not a wedding it wasn't, if it was a wedding, it was your sister's. It wasn't like a general wedding.
Okay.
And they had the kids show on because that's what's on in the morning. And you turned around and said to me, all kid shows is just bright colours and noises.
Yeah.
Go on Instagram and look at modern photography. Do you not realise the other day you even said this? So I put on a video where a guy's talking about a vintage lens that I really like the look of. And you walked in, saw the guy on the TV and you went, why does every YouTuber have to use fucking gels?
Oh my God, I remember that.
Everything now is just diabetically over-sweetened, oversaturated bollocks.
Yeah.
And that to me is the real negative consequence of, maybe unintended, but the real negative consequence of dumbing cameras down. Yeah. I'm not saying you should make every camera hard to use, but
I think if you're going to simplify how to use a camera, and then people are going to talk about it, they shouldn't then be the focal point. They shouldn't then be diabetic colours and stuff like that. They need to just talk about it for what it really is. Like these XT3s are simpler to use, like you said, because they're mirrorless and everything, so much easier to use. The same as with the Sony. So just talk about the damn camera. Don't make everything so fluffy and unicorns and...
But I think, even beyond the presentation of the person reviewing or talking about a camera, you have the problem of it's actually affecting the way people shoot.
Yeah.
Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I'm not going full Jurassic Park here, but just because you can underexpose something by 5 stops and bring it up doesn't mean it's a good idea to do it, and you shouldn't be proud of it.
Yeah.
Especially, here's the thing. I've shot wedding photos and underexposed something by 5 stops. It has happened. It's a fucking wedding.
Yeah.
But if you are a guy who is going to take 12 pictures of some dickhead rolled up in fairy lights in controlled lighting at a controlled pace where the shoot is happening you are the one leading it, it's happening at your schedule.
Yeah.
And you're underexposing something by that much. You're just shit.
Yeah.
You're just not very good at what you do.
Yeah.
And the problem, and this is the last thing I would say, and we're going to get back on point here. But the main problem as well is that these people feel justified because there is a new metric. There is a new metric, which is that if you have more followers than me, you must be right. If you have more likes than me, you must be right.
Yeah.
You can say that, do you remember Liar Liar?
Yeah.
But Jim Carrey's trying to say the pen is red and it's a blue pen. He can't say it.
Yeah.
If you have more followers than me, you can say whatever you want. It's just true, just because of consensus. In an age where everybody says that we should have like more science and we should have less about what you believe, but more about science and facts, and we should cut all the bullshit. We are as bad as we've ever been as a race, as in the human race, for just going with the consensus. If there are mob mentality, if there are more people doing this thing, it must be right.
Yeah.
That's the problem for me. Let's get back on track. Otherwise, I'm going to really go off on one. Do you know what? We've just finished wedding season. Let's be honest.
We have
4 left.
Yeah.
We've done, how many have we done?
What in total?
This year.
Oh, this year.
It's like 66. So 62 or 63.
I'll be honest with you, something like that.
We've crossed the 60 threshold for the year. And let's be honest, this has been the hardest year.
Without a doubt.
Like, it's been in places knackering.
Yeah.
And not just for the job itself, but for the some of the vendors you have to work with, and sometimes the wedding planners just don't know what they're doing, and this has been the hardest year.
This is the year where we've experienced the most difficulties in different aspects of the day that we hadn't yet had the opportunity to.
Or we would have had it like once in buffered by 25 weddings either side, and we wouldn't have felt the effects of it. And this year we've had a couple of weddings where we have walked away and we are just like, Jesus Christ, that was hard.
Yeah.
Like I have earned my KFC today.
Damn right. Those extra wings.
And then the next day we've had one that's been equally hard. That's been the difference. We've had like a few weddings this year where we've back-to-backed, which we've done before, but they've been back-to-back difficult days.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily someone's fault. You have like bad weather. We had that on Friday. Or was it Saturday? We had bad weather.
Saturday.
And, you have like things go wrong, like timings or registrars turning up late, or all sorts of things that can happen. But this has just been a year, hasn't it? Like,
it has.
We are going to enjoy our break.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's been the biggest learning curve. And then towards the end of it, you decide to switch systems.
Yeah, no, in the middle of it. Let's give me full credit for my stupidity. I should be switching now.
See, I'm being nice.
No, I've been fully
in the middle
stupid.
of it, he decided to switch systems.
I actually switched cameras over in the mix of 7 weddings in 15 days. No, 16 days. That's when I decided it was the best time for you to learn an entire new camera system while on the job.
It was a dumb decision.
Yes.
To be honest with you, it was a dumb decision. As my husband, I love you, but that was a dumb decision.
Yes.
However, there's always a however with me. I look at the bright side of everything.
Yeah.
I do believe in getting thrown in at the deep end and learning that way.
Yes.
I think, in all honesty, if you'd have decided, when's our last wedding, like the 7th or 8th of December, something like that. I think if you'd have decided then, oh yeah, we're going to switch systems and we don't have a wedding until the middle of January, and it's one wedding in January and then we've got a couple on the end of February, I think that I'd have just been like, I hate you so much. I cannot believe you've made me switch systems.
I can't believe you've done this.
I can't believe you've done this, Kris. I think that I would have just hated it because there's no flow to it.
Yeah.
And I'm not someone that picks up a camera when I'm not photographing, because I enjoy photographing at weddings and stuff like that, but I don't pick up a camera.
Right.
In between that, really, let's be honest, I don't, unless it's my Instax on my phone, I don't pick up cameras
I have to force you to take cameras with you places.
And I don't. And I think part of that helps my sanity because I'm because of the systems and everything. But because I don't pick cameras up like that, if you just switch systems in that break,
it would have been too cold.
I'd have been like, yep, no, you do weddings on your own now. I'm done.
You wouldn't have been coming in like
all my
warmed up.
All my work would have been awful. I would have forgotten about ISO. All this stuff that I learned would have just gone completely out the window.
All of a sudden you'd be like, I don't know what a camera is.
Yeah. So, you made a dumb decision.
All right.
But it was a good one.
Well, it's a bit hurtful. But.
Well, I'm honest, I'm married to you. What do you expect?
I think I agree. It's a stupid time to do it. But I think that what more people should do generally is go with what their mind tells them. Like, don't overthink a situation. Seriously, don't overthink it, because if you start looking for this is coming from me.
I was literally just going to say, this is coming from you, who is the overthinker of everything.
But I have to insulate myself from myself. That's the truth of it. All jokes aside, I have to. I know I overanalyze. I know I've got a negative perspective on most things. So when I have an idea and I think, okay, well, I might have a problem with this idea, I just need to, if I think in the long run it's going to be good, but I'm going to talk myself out of it, I have to just pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I'm actually really glad I did. And I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I came out of a wedding and I said to you, God, I wish I'd done this years ago.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed this so much.
It's actually changed your perspective quite a bit. And it's, like you said earlier, because we've had quite a rough year with weddings and that, it's actually gotten to the point where that wedding you came out of and you're like, I've really enjoyed today. And I could see that you enjoyed shooting that day. And it had nothing to do really with the people, the venue, the weather, anything like that. You enjoyed photographing.
Yeah.
So I think that you'd gotten to a point where you'd gotten a bit stale because you were so used to the camera and the lenses, and you knew all of that inside out and back to front. And you're someone that you like a little bit of a challenge, and you like to reinvent how you do stuff because you always believe in learning.
Yeah.
You never ever want to, but you have never wanted to be in a position where you're stuck. You just want to keep getting better and better. And I think in the middle of this year, you hit that point where you were like, actually, no, I'm not getting anything new out of this. I need to be more creative, and I can't because I'm stuck. So,
well, I'll tell you one other thing. I realized one of my own downfalls as a photographer is, as it was when I did it, it wasn't a downfall. But the landscape has shifted so much, it's now a negative. So when I got into photography, the first person whose work stopped me was Emily Soto. Now, her work has changed significantly, but that original, like, you can find her old videos on YouTube. That's where I watched those videos and I was like, those are the photos I want to take. And I bought a camera and I bought a lens that I thought would do it. And I literally shot like a psychopath for 2 years until I got somewhere near what I thought it looked like. And then I went off on my own tangent. That narrow depth of field, like very light, airy, studio owner once called it gay shit in a field. And I got in trouble with Facebook for changing my occupation to working in gay shit in a field. But the truth is, the narrow depth of field stuff, it's just what I like, right? But, and it's a pretty important but, I've done it. Like, I can't go any further with it. I took a 1.2 lens, an 85mm 1.2 lens on a full frame camera, and I increased the sensor size by 50 times to narrow the depth of field more.
Yeah.
I can't go any further without literally taking pictures of cream out of focus. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do.
I took that as far as I could take it. The offside of it, the problem I was developing was I was becoming very dependent on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, because I have a couple of social anxieties, I have a couple of issues when weddings present a couple of issues for me as my personality. And one of them is that when I see a scene a certain way and I'm in the process of photographing a scene a certain way, and then there is like an external factor. There is a venue person there, or there is a bridesmaid, or there is just some dickhead there that is then commentating on what they think would be a good photo.
Yeah.
That throws me off kilter, and I actually struggle to stay focused on what I want to do, because I feel like if I don't do what they've suggested, the bride and groom are going to think either I can't, and I know that's not the case at all, but they're going to think that either I can't or that I'm not going to do it out of spite or something. All of this is part of my overthinking. But I get the impression as I'm doing it, I really don't like people actually suggesting photos while I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
You are the only person. I don't even like it when brides and grooms do it, if I'm completely honest, because usually it's suggested right as I've set something up, and it's like, great, now we can do this thing that you've just told me you've got no enthusiasm for, and then we'll go do your thing, which I've got no enthusiasm for.
Yeah.
Like, we could have done that at the end, and you could have said, look, I like the idea of this.
Yeah.
And I could have seen how I would interpret that.
Yeah.
But it's when, like, we had this a couple of weeks ago. Side note, I hate venues that are golf courses. Just a personal thing.
Yeah.
I don't work any less hard, but I hate them, and I hate them for one specific reason. Those venues always just want you to photograph them as if you work for the venue.
Yeah.
Not for the couple.
Yeah. I hate bridges.
Yeah, there's always
I hate bridges.
We're going to get on the buggies, okay? You're going
Which is cool.
Right, and then we're going to, you like the buggies. And we're going to go down across, try not to get hit by 12 golf balls.
Yep.
And then we're going to go to this really nice bridge. And you're like, oh, good. I'm looking forward to it just being out in the middle of nowhere with a god-awful background, a massive deep water sign nailed onto it. And when they walk on the bridge, they look like they're 2 foot shorter because the walls of the bridge are so high.
Yep.
And we'll do that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when there's midday-ish sun. It's going to be a magical photo. I really can't wait to see it in your brochure without you asking for it.
Yeah.
So that's my reason for the issue with golf courses. But I just become too dependent when I felt that social anxiety come in on just going to narrow depth of field.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just thought, this looks fucking hideous. But at least if I take a picture at 1.2 or 1.4 and I shoot it in a kind of narrow depth of field way, at least it will look like a professional photo as opposed to an iPhone photo, which is what they're asking for.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what my thinking was. The problem is that's become such a crutch that I found this year I was walking into venues and I wasn't even exploring other possibilities. I was like, I know this is a safe bet for this look. There we go.
Yeah.
Which meant terrible photos.
Yeah.
Or not terrible photos, but very safe, boring photos that I wasn't building on. I wasn't getting better in certain aspects. And if I'm not getting better, I'm going backwards.
Yeah.
Add to that, like I say about stuff online, it's a little shout out here to an Instagram page. I believe it's called Trendy Photography Memes.
That's a funny page.
And one of the things they point out a lot is just the amount of people that just shoot a picture of their camera in their hand, narrow depth of field, or they'll shoot all these cliches. And one of the cliches is just this narrow depth of field thing. It's just becoming more and more of a thing because of the idiot-proof cameras. So I felt I needed to go in a direction where I wasn't doing that as much. And I got better compositionally because I was being more open to having to control all the factors in a scene. But it's also great because it's moving me quite far away from this broad slew of shite that is coming in where people are like, oh my God, is that a 1.8 lens? That must be a Wilga camera. Yeah. I'm moving away from that. What I do want to ask you in particular, though, and I'd be interested to hear other people who've made a similar switch, but so you've gone Canon to Sony, and Lord knows I know how much you were happy when you switched from Canon to Sony. It was the mirrorless switch mainly. You loved the EVF. It was a big deal, right? What is the good and the bad of jumping from Sony to Fuji?
Let's start with the good. So the good is I absolutely adore their 16mm lens.
Yeah.
Which I didn't have with the Sony or anywhere even close.
Well, the equivalent you would have had in your bag would have been the Sigma 24R.
Yeah.
And you barely touched it.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to use it for lay flats and that, but the 16mm Fuji lens is absolutely beautiful and you can get so freaking close.
Yeah.
It's unreal and you can get stuff in focus and it's really, really nice. I fell in love with that because I actually really liked the 18mm when we had that and we were doing the trial run at weddings. I'd go off with the 18mm and I took pictures of my lay flats and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But the 16mm has become...
Your lens.
Yeah, it's become my lens. It's gone.
Yeah,
you're never getting it back.
I'm going to have to get another one.
Yeah. But that lens is just lovely. Excuse me. And obviously there wasn't much of a switch to do with the viewfinder. Like I can see the picture in the camera.
From the Sony
to the Fuji. So that was same. And to me, that was very important. I had that.
Weird question, because you used it and I didn't. Do you find genuinely, do you find the viewfinder in the Fuji better or worse than the Sony, or do you not notice a difference?
No, there is a slight difference. It's slightly better.
Right.
With the Sony, viewing the image on the screen on the back of the camera and then viewing it through the viewfinder is the same thing.
Yes.
With the Fuji, when you view a picture on the screen on the back of the camera, you're like, eh.
Yeah.
Then you look through the viewfinder and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
There is that. It makes it worthwhile looking at it through the viewfinder. And also the viewfinder, I suppose it's because the camera and the lenses are a bit sharper, but the picture itself just looks so much nicer. There's that crispiness to it. And just, you can almost see the image as finished. Like, because there's a bit of grain to it as well.
Yeah.
And I see a finished image when I look into it. Because the other day I was taking some pictures of some lay flats. And I was looking on the back of the camera because I couldn't look through the viewfinder because it would have meant that my shadow would have blocked the light. Yeah. And also it would have meant that I would just be tainting the image. So I had to use the screen to take the picture. And then, so I took a few and I was like, I don't know if I like this. Looked through the viewfinder and I went, oh shit, this is lovely.
Yeah. So
it's an immediate difference. So that's such a positive because it's just really, really nice to have that. The things that I'd say are negatives at the moment is the damn play button. I hate
where the stupid place.
Hate where the play button is.
Yeah.
It's not.
It needs to be right thumb accessible.
Yeah. It because when I'm looking through the viewfinder at pictures, I have to physically move, and I got a little thumb.
Yeah. No, it's not even about that.
But it doesn't mean. But I'm stretching over.
I've got bigger hands than you. It's annoying for me.
It's stupid. So move the damn play button, or let me customize it somewhere else.
It needs to be so. On the XT3 on the back, if I just grab one here, I'm going to describe this because obviously we're not videoing.
Oh yeah.
But on the back, you see where you've got the D-pad, the menu D-pad. Lose that, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Just have a menu button and do everything else with a joystick.
Yeah.
And then where that D-pad is, put a play button.
Yeah, just put
Move the play button over there and make that button a custom function button for something like face detectable. I don't care.
I actually miss from the Sony, I miss the eye detect button. You know, I used to be able to press, which you had set for me, which was perfect. And it was in the right place because it was for my left hand to use. Yeah. So I miss that in comparison to both.
Well, you hold a camera different to me, especially your left hand. Like I do a lot of my holding with my left hand. I can almost not use my right hand to shoot because I even sometimes use my left hand to actually press the shutter as well. And that's just come from years of holding shit in front of the camera, basically.
Yeah.
You hold your thumb is like, your left thumb is really weirdly placed to me. Not wrong, but it's just weird for me.
You, yeah.
And that was when I got the Sony and I could set that function button. I was like, well, the most obvious thing here for Jamila is that we set that so that when you hold that down, it just finds a face.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it worked really well.
Right, let's talk about the face detect.
Yes.
Because you've not used too much.
It doesn't touch the Sony.
Not at all.
It doesn't touch Sony. It's passable. It's okay.
Yeah. It's actually not as good as the Canons in their DSLR and live view.
Wow. It's just not as good as a Sony. And I suppose it's just because I've gotten better at understanding a camera and taking a picture that it's not the worst thing in the world for me, but I definitely do miss that.
All of the cameras I'm using, I turn face detect off.
You see, I like to have face detect purely for the walking up the aisle and him seeing her for the first time.
Yeah.
Because
but I wish
there's
they
so
would
much
do
movement.
it like the Sony though. With the Sony, it would show you grey squares on the faces that it had found in the scene. So it could be 20 faces. And then you can move your focus point to the right where the face that you want is, and it will go, okay, you want that one.
Yeah, and it sticks to that.
Whereas on the Fuji, you move the focus point and it loses all the faces. Yeah, okay. So you go to then shoot and it goes, oh no, but this face. And no, I want to choose whether or not I want the face.
Yeah. See, I had that yesterday during Bright,
You're
but
literally
missed
telling
it.
me, not only do I not get to choose whether or not I have a face, you're telling me which face. That's the one problem I have. I have no doubt from what I've seen in the short time I've had this, that Fuji will do something to correct the issue, because the XT3 has got a couple of years on it before they even start talking about the replacement.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they'll do something, but at the moment it is not even close.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm not a particular fan of, and it was different for the Sony and it was in a good way, was the shutter speed button, or is the ISO button on the left?
That's the ISO.
ISO button. I actually hate where that button is. The knob is, sorry. I hate where it is.
Yeah.
Because again, it's that whole left hand thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm having to move and then twist.
Yep.
And whereas when I'm actually photographing, I now remember which one is ISO and which one's shutter speed. Whereas now looking at the camera, I've got no idea.
Yep.
But before, I could literally press a button with my right hand whilst I was looking through the viewfinder and change my ISO.
Yep.
And it didn't mean that it interrupted me in any way.
Yep.
Whereas at the moment, this is interrupting me. And then when I have to bring my hand over to change the shutter speed, I'm going over the viewfinder.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
And then I lose the picture because my hand has decided that it's going to get in the way or something
like
stupid.
I said with your one, I think what we do is we're going to make it dial assignable so that it'll actually be where your thumb is as opposed to the dials on top.
I do like though where so underneath the ISO button, ISO knob, the circular thing, there is a
little sub dial.
Yeah, there's a sub dial for single shot, multiple
continuous
shot,
slow, continuous high.
I actually really like where that is, because that to me makes sense, because you've got where that dial is, you've got the little handle bit that pokes out. It makes a lot of sense. So I think that practically that's actually in a really good place, because
I agree,
before
but
I had to go
would
in
make
menu.
one change. This is the change I would make. So you've got double exposure.
Which
After
one's that?
S, there's like 2 squares.
Oh yeah.
Get rid of that.
I don't go that way.
Advance, get rid of that.
What the hell does that do?
It's like stupid toy modes.
Oh, I do take pictures, by the way.
Modes. But you don't play around with the camera to get loads of stupid effects.
No, I just want it to
then
work.
The next one I think is pano.
Oh, okay,
Get rid of that.
That makes
Put
sense.
it in the menu. I don't care. Keep it in the camera. I don't want it on the dial. I want the dial to be like 1, 2, 3 click.
Yeah.
So I want single, continuous slow, and continuous high.
Yep.
And if you have to be a dick about it, and I want it to be a little bit more of a space, put movie in there, which is the last one.
What's BKT?
Bracket. Where you take like 3 photos and it's like under, over, and then in the middle, and then you can combine them for HDR.
Oh, that's just lame.
Again, put it in the menu. I have no problem with people that want to do that, but I want to be able to muscle memory that without having to look at it.
Yeah.
And on the other side, your sub dial is for the metering modes. So it's like if you want to have the whole scene or spot meter. There's probably a lot of clicking going on right now while Jamila tries to murder a camera.
Yeah, sorry.
So you can have like whole scene or whatever. But the thing about the way we shoot and the reason that you don't care about this is because we don't have anything automated. We have, we're in manual. We're shooting manual aperture, manual shutter speed, manual ISO.
Well, I do have to say that sub dial is in kind of a stupid place. And I apologise for the clicking. Yeah, because as I pulled it all the way around to the end one, which is the bracket with no dots in the middle of it, it's so close to the shutter button that you can't actually ping it back.
Yeah.
So
it's not something you're going to move on the fly.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, if you hadn't said that was there, I never would have noticed.
No. And like I say, it doesn't matter because you're looking at your exposure real time and we shoot everything manual. It's not like you're putting it into like auto ISO and then you're using the exposure compensation dial.
Yeah.
So,
there is one other thing that I wish this camera had that the Sony had is the touchscreen.
I turned it off.
But can you put it back for me? Oh my God.
Let me explain why. And then you can tell me your bit.
Okay.
The reason I turned it off, is because
Test me.
I'm old, right? And I'm going to use the technical term here. I was mushing my face so hard against the screen. I swear to God, right? I'm at a wedding a few weeks ago, right? And I'm not even making this up. During a ceremony, and I go to focus on the bride's face. I think they'd done the rings, and it's like fucking annoying, like 2 minutes between the rings and the kiss. I just kiss. I'm ready, kiss. And they're dicking about, and I'm watching my focus point go away from me, and I'm like, where the fuck are you going? So I move it back with my thumb, and I like move in and I mush up for a closer look, and it goes, and I'm like, no, stop moving away. And I was thinking, my camera's having a fit, right? Because I don't like touch screens. I will put it back on your camera.
Good. I also don't understand. I've got a honker of a nose, and I've never had that experience in my life.
I can tell you why.
Tell me for why.
I can tell you for why. It's because of your stupid glasses that you turn your head so far sideways to look through a camera. So when I hold a camera, God, I wish this was being videoed, right? I go right eye through the center, okay? So right eye through the center, and I'm like this. Right. So I'm straight forwards. I'm looking. When I'm shooting, do you notice I open my other eye?
Yeah, you're weird.
A lot of people close. Right, it looks weird.
But I know the reason why.
I'm watching other stuff going on. Like during the ceremony, I'm fucking weird for this, and I need to brag about this more. But I can set my focus point on who I want it to be on and look around the room, and I am so steady with the way that I hold the camera that I know if something started to happen and I'm not looking at direction, I can just fire the shutter and I've got the shot. Right?
Yeah.
So I've got used to that. Whereas you... and I'm going to describe this for the boys and girls at home, but when you hold a camera, you almost hold it like you are shooting out of the corner of your right eye, right? So you hold it like over here, which you think is normal.
I do. It's normal. What are you talking about?
To everyone else who is not a psychopath in the universe, it actually looks like you're pretending to take a photo, but you don't know what it looks like to take a photo. Do you remember years ago there was the campaign with Leonardo DiCaprio with the watches where he was like holding the watch on like his fingers and then like on his shoulder?
Oh yeah.
And it was like a meme that he didn't know how to hold a watch.
Yeah.
That's what you look like. You look like the shittest spy in the world. Like you hold it like this.
I don't think you're telling the whole truth there.
I'm telling you 100% the truth. 100% the truth. I think you get a lot of people sympathise with you at weddings.
Why do they think I'm a bit special?
They think you're maybe I'm bringing you to work because you're not allowed to stay home alone.
Wow.
I think that might be.
That's really deep.
Yeah, I think just by the way you hold the camera and then you talk and they're like, oh, she's normal. But when they see you use a camera, I think some people think that there might be like a half marathon run to support people with your issues.
You're a dick. No, but back to the reason why I need that touch screen.
Yes.
Okay. Because I am the other kind of S. I am short. Okay. I'm short. So not only is this good for ceremonies, but it's also good for lay flats when I can't get myself in the way of light.
Be able to touch the screen on the tilt.
Yeah. And also when I've got really tall bridesmaids and a bride in 7-inch heels, I'm not allowed to wear heels to weddings because I can't run fast in them. So I have to wear flats.
To be fair, you can't run fast in any shoes, but...
You shush right now, okay? I'm talking. But when I need to get the camera up and above to take pictures of the back of the dress, I can't do that by stretching over and then moving the focus point with my thumb. Fine. I need to be able to touch it and boom.
I will put touchscreen back on your camera.
Good. That's what I like.
But if you are in the middle of a ceremony and you miss a first kiss because your nose moves the focus point, that's on you.
In 18 months, I never had that problem.
This is a different camera. And I'm pretty sure it's scientific that noses keep growing.
But yeah, so back to the original question that you asked me, that's kind of my pros and cons. I am still getting used to this eye cup thing. Mm-hmm. And I know you hated that I never had an eye cup on my Sony.
You literally took the eye cup off of the Sony and it was just raw.
Yeah, it was just raw. And I tell you for why, husband, because as you know, I've got 3-inch thick glasses on my honker here.
Yeah.
It's really, I know it sounds stupid, but it's actually very uncomfortable to use the rubber. What's this thing called?
No, it's not. I don't understand it. I shoot with sunglasses on. It's annoying as fuck.
Yeah,
I will point out really quickly to anyone listening that you use the word honker to mean nose.
I do. I mean it to mean nose.
In the same conversation where you have mentioned other parts of your body. So
I am referencing my nose. But But that's
the pros and cons. I'll tell you what I'll add. Here's what I find the cons.
Mm-hmm.
I hate this. The little focus dial on the front bottom left of the camera.
Yeah, you've got to think about that, haven't you?
Because it's dumb. Because it should be really fairly difficult to change between modes. It should take a bit of force, right?
Right.
Because I don't want to suddenly be in manual focus.
Yeah.
Right? They're walking out and someone nudges me and I'm like my hand's in the wrong place, and just by someone nudging me, I knock it into manual focus, and then I miss every single picture of them walking out because it's in a dumb place. So I now have to hold the camera very slightly different. I actually hold it so that I'm not near it.
I'm trying to work out, because I completely understand what you're saying. I'm trying to work out now how, because that button's never bothered me.
So if I'm holding a camera, I've got to do this with a microphone in the way, but I hold like this. Okay, so my thumb is in the ballpark.
Oh, I see. Where's my thumb's? Okay.
So I'm supporting the lens at the very bottom, like right next to the camera body, and it's just in the way where I could. And I did yesterday. I did it once.
Oh, okay.
Whereas now I actually have to almost put like 2 fingers on the front of the lens, palm of my hand on the bottom of the camera, and then it sort of makes it very hard for me to reach that dial. Which, you know.
Okay. All right.
I also had the really funny thing of, so I bought all the new Fuji stuff.
Yes.
New bags, because mirrorless stuff is stupidly small and my old bag was huge. All set up, right? And woke up in the morning, ready for a wedding, all batteries charged, all cards ready to go, all new cards, all excited to get out and start being a Fujiographer, as I'm sure it's called, or something.
Christ.
Something stupid like that. I'm ready to go and shoot a wedding. I'm excited to go and to take pictures at a wedding. And I'm flicking through a forum about photography, and this guy says, anyone else have the problem where your Fuji just won't turn on when you get to a certain shutter count? And in a room on my own, sat on the floor because of my bad back, I was like, hold the fucking phone, you did what now? And there's people saying, oh yeah, sometimes they'll just, and they won't come back on, they'll just brick. I was like, oh good. I'm glad I'm someone that shoots massive volumes. Now, I have no problem with replacing a shutter, but I feel like it should still try and limp across the finish line until I tell it to start.
So what's the apparent limit where it just goes?
Well, this one guy said 100,000, which if that's the case, I'm buying a lot of new shutters. Yeah, we are effed in the A.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so very quickly, just to talk about a couple other things. The XH1, which seems to be kind of a bit of a distant memory for a lot of people. It's kind of fallen out of favor, I guess, because the XT3's come in and now the X Pro 3. If you are considering getting a new camera body and you're thinking about mirrorless, you can do a lot worse than spend £1,000 and get the XH1, which has fairly decent image stabilization, which I couldn't give a shit about. Is a bit more robust, so it'll feel like your DSLR. The lenses are fairly cheap to pick up. And for £1,000, you get the battery grip and a couple of extra batteries as well. I'm staggered with the value for money on that camera. That is the best value for money second body I think you can buy in the world.
Ooh.
I'd go that far of any system. I would go that far. The shutter on it is bizarre. And I understand it's to do with wanting the stabilization to be sort of helped. So it's got like almost like a leaf. I think it's a leaf shutter, but it's very... like the shutter button is ridiculous. It's
squidgy.
I don't even know if I'd say squidgy. It just kind of doesn't do anything. It's like a souffle. It just kind of goes.
What does it feel? There's another kind of button somewhere that when you press it, it feels like that's not going anywhere.
See, we're back on you being special now. I'm
going to get complex from this. You know that, don't you?
But seriously, really cool camera. couple of it's fallen back a little bit with a couple of features that are in the XT3, which is a bit frustrating. But as a second body, I don't think you could get a better one. I'm tempted to just go and get another one just because, Christ, the value for money is nuts.
Yeah.
Now, this is for Fuji. I'm going to pitch an idea here, and everyone in the world who knows what they're talking about is going to agree with me. And if you don't agree with me, it's because you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to pitch an idea for a camera that Fuji should make. And they should bring it out at the end of next year. They should absolutely do this without fail. And they can send me a royalty check. And I can put as many zeros as I want on the end, and they will still be making a profit. Now, I have complained a lot in my life. It's one of my favorite hobbies. But I have complained for a long time that I've wanted an X-Pan, Hasselblad X-Pan, which is a very, very unusual camera. So it takes 35mm film and it shoots panoramic single shots with a really cool wide aspect ratio. Okay?
Yeah.
The problem is that they've become a little bit of a hipster thing, and they've become a little bit sought after, and the price has gone through the roof. Now, a few years ago, when I was a bit unsure about photography, I found one for £900 full working order, and I turned it down.
We're idiots, aren't we?
And it's now like £2,000 over that. So here's my idea, and it's thanks in part to Nick Carver, who's a really cool film photographer, great YouTube channel. Jamila loves his accent. Loves his truck.
Oh, yeah.
They need to bring out an X100, but they need to make it a pan. So here's my pitch.
Okay.
So the fixed lens X100 that we had the X100F.
Yeah.
They need to bring out the X200 pan.
Okay.
And it has to have the aspect ratio of 16:7 as the sensor size.
Okay.
I don't care how hard this is to develop. They have to do it. Just put two sensors next to each other and clip a bit. I don't care. Do it.
Okay.
Then they need to put on it what would be about the full frame equivalent of about a 40mm lens. So a decent standard, but with that huge aspect ratio, it's quite an interesting perspective.
Okay.
It only needs to be like a 2.8 or a 3.5. It doesn't need to be super fast. I'm sure that there'll be some mouthy dickhead on YouTube that will say it's not fast enough because for some reason everything has to have all the features all the time. But it will be fine. It will be an amazing street photography camera, an amazing landscape camera. It will be brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few things they have to do with it.
Okay.
The first thing is not just put a normal sensor in and have a digital crop. It has to have a big, wide sensor. It has to have a daft sensor to take the pictures properly, to give you the maximum use of all of the megapixels available.
Yeah.
The next thing is do not sell it in black. Sell it in raw metal.
Okay.
Right? It needs to look old and it needs to take damage. Okay, here's the thing. You know wooden furniture, when it's like really highly polished and then it gets a scuff, it's fucked.
Yeah, it looks horrible.
Don't want that. You want that old school wood that when it starts to get beaten up, it takes on character.
Yeah.
That's what they need to do. They need to have a camera that develops character with the more abuse it gets.
Yeah.
Like people. Like I have. I've gotten more and more character with the more and more abuse you give me.
Well, is it no surprise after what you said about me tonight, huh?
So they need to do that. They need to put in a few changes like I've said.
Yep. Like
with that stupid manual focus to single to continuous focus button. They need to move that right out of the way, make it a decent button.
Yeah.
But pretty much everything else can stay as is. Has to have a square lens hood and a decent sliding cap. One thing I hated about the X100F was the stupid lens cap that I had to replace because it was stupid. A pressure mounted lens cap is stupid. Everyone that made it should be fired. The people that even the people that didn't protest enough about it should be fired from that company. That camera will sell billions. Probably not, but still. That camera
That's a very bold claim.
It will sell
billions.
It will sell a lot. No video functions because you don't need it.
Yeah.
Go away with your video stuff. No one is even using the video functions of these cameras particularly well. Right? No video functions at all.
Yeah.
No double exposure. None of that. I want it to be ISO, shutter, aperture, take photos, shut up. That's what the camera has to be.
You want the Jamila version, don't you? The no bullshit version.
I want no bullshit. So when that comes out next year or in 2 years, you're welcome, everyone that buys one. So we're happy with the Switch?
Yes.
At this point?
Happy. And now I know I can have touchscreen. I'm even happier. Thank you, bub.
Really quickly, let's just last little bit. Let's just talk through some lenses here, because we've now settled pretll much, I think, on what we're going to go forward with. So
okay,
yeah,
let me go first because I love some of the lenses. So the 16mm,
160mm for you right there.
Oh my god, it's beautiful.
Yep, it's the perfect lens.
It is the perfect
lens. There's no problem
lens
with it at all,
and it's really nice for candids as well. It's
yep.
really nice for candids. But this is just an absolutely beautiful lens. I even don't care that all the Fuji lenses have their aperture on the.
No, you've got used to that quite quickly.
Yeah, I have gotten used to that quite quickly. But yeah, I absolutely love it. It's a lovely lens. You can shoot. I suppose it's the equivalent to me using the 35 previously.
No,
it's only 35.
It's the 24.
No, but in the sense that
in the amount you use it, it's
the amount I use it. That's what I mean. And how much I use it for. So it is an absolutely beautiful. It's so sharp, and you can get so close to stuff, and it creates.
And it's weather sealed, and it's 1.4, and it's sharp at 1.4.
I love it at 1.4,
and it's sharp up close, as sharp as it is far away.
The highest I take it to is f4 for when I'm doing my lay flats.
Yeah,
and
very quickly, so that this makes sense, because obviously, again, we don't have the benefit of video here because we both are wearing our comfies.
Oh yes.
When you say lay flats, now I believe the American term is actually flat lays.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Which is stupid.
Don't say it that way.
But what you're essentially talking about is you'll take like the jewelry, the shoes, the veil, and so on, and you'll arrange them like a product shot for a magazine.
Yes.
And then photograph them on the floor or on a table or on a surface that looks nice and fits the venue and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
Yeah.
Just clarifying that. Sorry. Next lens.
That's fine. Yes, absolutely love that. And my next favourite lens, by the way, I just want to sign up the macro. What's the macro? It's the 80mm macro.
Yep.
Is
huge.
Very weighty.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very weighty.
It's a big boy.
It is. However, as with all lenses, I just throw the hood away because I don't care. I just chuck it away. I never use it. I can't stand them. They get in my way.
Right.
It is really, really, really sharp.
Yeah.
It's so sharp. But it's not just sharp, it's so quick.
Yeah.
So very, very impressed with that as well.
The main problem actually with macro lenses, and do you remember the 100mm macro? We held a few workshops, and there would always be people that are like, oh, I had that lens, but it's really slow, so I got rid of it. If you're an owner of a macro lens and you're using it for portraits, or you're using it for macro and you're finding it to be very slow focusing, take it out of full focus range. Yes. Specify the focus range you want it in, and it will be. I literally had this conversation at one of my last workshops where the guy was like, I used to have the 100mm macro, but it just spent all of its time seeking. And it's like, I've never had that problem with that lens. And then he said to me, oh yeah, but you've got to have it in full. I was like, no.
There's your problem.
No, full should be spelled FOOL, because you don't need that mode. It should just be, they should literally just say macro or portrait.
Yeah. But not only is it so sharp, it's so quick. And at 2.8, it completely blurs the shit out of everything.
Yeah.
More so than the 100mm macro, the Canon one. Right. So it's just.
I think it renders a lot better than that one. That one was a bit. It had quite a jittery background compared to this.
Yeah. Yeah, right. This is very smooth, very, very smooth. So the macro is a lovely little lens. And the other lens I absolutely adore is the 56mm, which is the equivalent to the 85.
Yep. The 1.2.
Holy shitballs. This is so sharp and amazing during ceremonies. It produces absolutely beautiful pictures, and it's so freaking tiny.
Yeah.
Like it's...
Do you use the lenses on that?
No.
Right.
I don't use lenses on anything. Come on, you know me by now.
You do on the 16mm?
Yeah, because the lens hood is cool. It's
you know what? It's fine.
It's square.
Just carry on. It's fine.
Yeah, but no, I don't use a lens hood on this. I chuck it in the bag.
The 56, the 80mm and the 16mm.
Yeah, those are my 3 go-to lenses. I love them.
So because I can't take the same ones as you, I'll talk about other ones. Otherwise, this would be quite a boring, dragged out ending. My most used lens, as it was with when I was a full frame shooter, it's the 35mm equivalent. So I've got the 23mm 1.4. I actually really like the size of this lens. It's a little bit bigger than the 23mm f2, which I prefer. I found the 23mm f2 to be a bit small in hand, especially on a gripped body. It just looked a bit stupid.
The lens is huge on that.
Yeah, well, it's a tiny bit prone to flaring, I would say. The one thing I will say is that, and I've used a couple of these, the lens hood is not the most perfectly built to fit on the lens. It takes a little bit of negotiating. Look, there you go. See how that takes a bit of effort to get that off there.
There's one of the many reasons I don't use them.
Fair play. Well, when you see me walk around and I smack my cameras against people and things, then you'll realise that there's a reason I use.
Oh yeah, I've seen you do that many times.
It's more for protection than natural flaring. That's a really cool all-purpose lens. That was the main thing. If I'm going to switch to Fuji, or if I'm going to switch to Olympus, or if I'm going to switch to Pentax, if I'm going to switch to anything, I have to have a 35mm equivalent, full frame equivalent, that I don't want to throw off a bridge, and that's really, really nice.
It's a nice lens.
It's sharp from 1.4. It's a really cool lens. And I heard that this one's, so by the way, I'm talking about the 23mm 1.4. I've heard that this is loud and slower focusing than the other one. I mean,
I really haven't noticed that.
But I get the feeling that people just sit around with like little recording devices and make videos and don't actually take pictures. The 35mm 1.4 is quite loud for what it is. It's a bit small for me, and it's a little bit like plasticky. Like I'd like it to be a bit more robust. This is the one I believe that they're updating. I was told by a random Fuji guy that it's going to be an F1. So if they bring that out, that'll be really cool.
I've not used that one, I don't think.
No, I don't think you have. But it's weird because you were quite a 50 user at full frame, but you've not touched that one.
Yeah.
The 90mm is probably my favorite portrait lens at the moment. Up there with the macro is my favorite headshot lens in studio, but the 90mm is my favorite portrait lens. Really nice compression, and because I've got a little bit more depth of field than I would do with full frame, it's actually quite nice. It gives quite a lot of context, so you can really smush the background into the person, but it's still got quite a lot of context. And what's becoming one of my favorite lenses to use was, I actually bought this and thought you'd be mad at me. So I'm going to say this wrong and you're going to enjoy this. Okay. So I believe it's the Zhongyi Mitacon Speedmaster 35mm f/0.95 manual focus lens. I got it in silver. I didn't want it in silver, but it was like 200 quid cheaper in silver where I got it. So I got it in silver because I'm not stupid. The focus throw on this is beautiful. It's so nice to use manual focus. The Fujis are great for focus peaking and stuff. I actually prefer that to the Sony with the Fuji. And obviously an f/0.95, mainly using it at the moment either for candids on the X Pro, or when I'm done photographing like the wedding breakfast room, I then go back through with this and I for like some interesting, like real narrow depth of field detail shots. As much as I'm trying to get away from doing that stuff, like too much of it, this just produces really sharp stuff even at 0.95. So that's really nice. I just wish it wasn't silver. I probably have to get another one that's in black just to.
Not yet.
No, I know, just to offset. It's just the problem is you have the X Pro, and the X Pro is there to kind of let you slip into the background and not be as obvious. And then you've got this heaping silver bastard on the front of the camera.
You don't blend as well.
I don't blend as well, and the fact that at the last 3 weddings I've been to, someone's called me a bouncer, which is hurtful. I think we've covered all bases with.
We have, yeah.
I think the one thing I sort of touched on, but when it came to switching, one thing I will cover really quickly is why I didn't go down the Canon mirrorless route if I was going to go mirrorless. And obviously there would have been the benefit of just buying an adapter and I could use all the same lenses and just buy a new camera and go from there. Here's a couple of things. Firstly, the cost of the lenses for that system, and I'd want to go native down the road. The cost of the lenses for that series is barbaric. It is disgusting, the amount of money that is being charged for those lenses.
Oh, really?
It is just ridiculous, and it makes, to me, and I loved Canon. I love Canon. I still love so many of their lenses. They still have two of my all-time favorite lenses by a mile.
Yeah, one of which is sat in the cupboard that you'll never get rid of.
I won't get rid of one of them. It's like a child to me. The problem is it makes Canon look like an elitist company where you have to have a huge bank balance and you pretty much have photography as a side hobby between affairs. Like, it's so expensive.
Yeah.
That was the first problem. The second problem, I had someone bring one on a workshop and he said he'd worked for Canon. So I'll say he worked for Canon, but I don't know for sure. So whatever, but he had a EOS R and the 50mm. It was very, very sharp. It was hideously unbalanced.
Yeah, I can imagine actually, yeah.
Hideously unbalanced. It was so front heavy. And which
50mm was it?
The new one for that camera, which is bigger than any one you've ever used. So going back to my guitar playing days, I was a big fan of, I had a Les Paul, which is really arse heavy. So the bit that's the body is the heavy part.
Yeah.
Which is quite nice when you go up the neck. It actually, that sort of ill balance works quite nicely for one thing.
Yeah.
I also had an SG for years. And the SG was so headstock heavy, so poorly balanced, that I'd get knackered playing it on stage because by the second or third song, you've spent 10, 12 minutes fighting to hold it up while you're trying to do what you do, when really you need to just kind of sit there and do what it's told to do. That's what the Canon R felt like with the native lens. It just felt like I wanted to fall forwards the whole time. And it's not a matter of it being too heavy. It's a matter of it being too badly balanced. That's my main problem. And then the final thing, and I want to end on this. This is the thing I want to end on, and then we can go to bed. You can go to bed. I'll stay up and edit. The final thing I would say is that regardless of whatever dickhead you have listened to on YouTube or on a podcast or in a camera store or who works for Canon or works for a camera store trying to sell you a Canon, if you are selling a professional camera body, it should have a redundancy option. It should not have one card slot. It's not about elitism. It's not about moaning about a pointless feature. I'm not asking for a different codec of 6K or something else that nobody knows how to actually get the most out of. I'm talking about, I am a fucking wedding photographer. And in the last 7 years, I have had, I think it's 9 cards fail. I have had 2 this year, both in a Canon. Mm-hmm. And when one card fails and you don't have another one and you're going, oh, but it's got excellent live view options and I can just adapt all of my EF. They don't care. They want their photos. And if you are a professional industry working person and your photos are the thing that make you your money, not you selling Squarespace or selling some bullshit, you need a redundancy option.
Yeah.
And if there is people out there who are comfortable shooting weddings with only one card slot, Lord help me, an SD card slot, only one, and it's an SD one. If that's what they're happy with, then full power to them. Mm. I know someone who recently said that they are happy with it, and what they do is halfway through the day, they back up what's on that card onto a laptop and then change cards. Glorious. I've had a card die mid-ceremony.
Yeah.
Best of luck. It's all fine. This is the thing. It's all fine until it isn't.
Yeah.
And then you can take your clients, say from weddings or from whatever, and you can sit down with them at their house and you can put on YouTube and you can show them Jared Poland talking about how it doesn't matter about 2 card slots. And I'm sure they'll go, oh, gee, Mr. Photographer, thanks so much for showing me the light. I thought I cared that I lost half my wedding, but now I see that I apparently don't because some guy who's making money out of saying a thing has said a thing.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say is that if Canon had brought out a viable option, an actual legitimate option for me to switch to, I would have stayed with Canon. But they are almost definitely about to enter their last DSLR cycle. They will bring out a 5D Mark V. I have no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
They will bring out, I believe they've announced, a 1DX Mark III.
Yeah.
Great. And in 5 years after they've come out, I think they will have withered the lineup of lenses that go onto that camera, and they will just be pushing consumer level cameras and consumer level things for mirrorless.
Yeah.
One issue I find with a lot of photographers, and it's not me saying that you are a bad person for not knowing this, it's that you will benefit greatly from knowing this. Nikon and Canon don't make the lion's share of their money from consumer level electronics. So do not assume that, well, they'd have to keep up with the cycle of things because otherwise how else would they make their money? I can't give you a percentage, but I can tell you right now that Nikon are making hand over fist more money on medical glass than they are on shitty consumer electricals. So if you think that it's just a never-ending, great, constant train of there's always going to be another thing, there's always going to be an improvement, there's always going to be the next thing, I don't think there will be. I may just be lucky enough to be old enough to remember companies that have gone bust when they seemed invincible.
Yeah.
So when you're booking your Thomas Cook holiday after having just watched Bury FC play in the Football League, and you realize that some things aren't forever, get a camera with a second fucking card slot. I love you all for listening to this drivel. Jamila, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Welcome, Bobby. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody.